4:46 p.m. Eastern Time, December 28th. 10-game slate and a wild one at that. It hasn't even started yet, Adam. I had the luxury of writing the deeper dive today. You know how that goes. I know I bitch about it. I'm really not, though. I mean, I love doing this stuff, but I got through shooting guard, and then the wall news broke. And then basically had to make 100 different revisions, but it did open things up a lot, right? So before we even jump into it, talk to me about where you stand here with no Wall, Morris. Obviously, Dwight Howard is out. Otto Porter, LeBron James, Rajon Rondo done for a month. Mirotic, Wes Matthews, Jeff Teague, Alex Len, Paul George. The list goes on. Kyle Lowry, so on and so forth. A ton of guys absent from tonight's slate of games. And it's definitely throwing, well, you know what? Not throwing, but it's mixed things up a whole lot since last night's podcast that I did with Dan, or since looking at it from last night. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good slate to remind people that to be contrarian in tournaments, you don't have to be completely off the board on every single play, especially in basketball. If it's going to be really hard to win a tournament tonight if you're banking on the Wizards guys, the Lakers guys, and the Thunder guys all not doing well. It's probably not going to happen. You can find a way to be contrarian without just going completely off the reservation, and I think people kind of forget that sometimes.
No, it's such good advice. Resident troll in Slack chat, Seth, who has been with us since the Fan Vice days. He won't admit it, but he loves us. He was saying today, you only like this slate if you're eating the chalk, but it's really not true, because you can go with a lineup that has a decent amount of chalk in it and still pivot to a few super low-owned guys that have been completely ignored now that the slate has opened up with all of this value, most of this value, which is going to be chalky. So just because there are a bunch of players that are in really good spots that we're going to have a lot of, by no means suggests that you can't do a few things differently to get yourself exposed to lesser-owned players and therefore be different in the field.
Yeah, exactly. There's three teams now, at least, but three counting the Lakers, the Thunder, and the Wizards, where there's just going to be so much ownership, but that's still a lot of players that are carrying ownership there. So it makes it so their ownership's a little bit lower than it would be if we were only talking about, one of those teams being in the situation they're in. But it also just takes ownership away from the other 27 teams on the slate and makes it so the ownership on those guys is lower. So, again, you really don't need to be that crazy to still have really, really unique and contrarian lineups.
Agreed. And one more thing to build out to what you were saying, and I think this is a really important factor. There's a stark contrast, a big difference between good chalk and bad chalk, right? There's a lot of times bad chalk. Like if you have if you're talking about chalk and you have somebody like Josh Hart yesterday, I get that on FanDuel 3,700, but DraftKings he was above 4K. Pretty popular value play. I don't know what his percentages are. I'm just using him as an example. He's not a high per minute guy. His minutes weren't necessarily locked in, although we thought he'd play 30 plus, but he was not a guy that you're saying, man, if I fade him, I'm probably going to get crushed. But there are certain aspects where you have got players that are chalk, where you say at this price point, I just don't see the benefit of fading them based on their usage, based on their minutes, based on the matchup. And there are a few of those guys tonight.
There's a big difference between point per dollar chalk and raw point chalk. Like,
right.
Sometimes people will become chalk because everyone's like, oh, well, he's 4K and he's going to hit 6X. Like, okay, that's cool. If he's most likely going to score like 24 and not a point more, you're fine not being with the field on that. But when it's someone who is in a spot, like Lonzo last night, where it has nothing to do with him hitting 6X his salary, it's that he's very likely to hit 50 plus actual fantasy points. That's where you get in trouble, just blindly fading chalk.
For sure. And to take it one step further, we'll jump into the games right after this. There's even a difference between just looking at chalk, whereas there could be a guy that is not a particularly high fantasy point per minute guy, but still makes for a very good play simply because he's going to get the minutes, right? Oftentimes, if you're say you're 3,700 and we're expecting you to play 38 minutes, even if you're a 0.88 fantasy point per minute guy at sub 4K, that's more than enough. So these guys don't have to be excellent players. They don't have to be great per minute producers. So long as we can lock them in for big minutes, knowing that they're on the court long enough at a cheap price tag, that's really all that matters, which goes back to what you're saying. Fantasy point per dollar is really the only thing that we care about here.
Yeah, well, raw points more than point per dollar.
Oh, well, yeah, sure. Well, raw point. Okay, yeah, you're right. You're saying, yeah, I guess I interpreted what you were saying differently, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, if you're cheap, $3,700, it's about raw points, but at the same time, they kind of go hand in hand with those cheap guys. Either way, I don't need a guy that's 1.3 fantasy points per minute at $3,500, as long as I can lock him into the minutes. What do you say we get started here?
Yeah, let's go. Lots to talk about.
Yeah, a whole lot to talk about. Indiana, Detroit. Pacers 6.5-point favorites, 2.5 or 205 over under. Victor Oladipo probable to play here. Tweaked his shoulder. He didn't practice on Thursday. Did they have shoot around today? Did he?
I haven't seen.
Neither have I. I don't really think it matters all that much, honestly.
They said
what's
they thought he was going
interesting?
to play.
Yeah, he's probable. Interestingly, though, Blake Griffin is. I get that he hasn't been a monster ceiling guy, but I mean, I said it the other show. Only a guy other than LeBron James averaging 25 or more points, 8 or more rebounds, 5 or more assists, 2 or more threes per game. Big numbers. And he's been very, very reliable. He's fallen to $8,400 on DraftKings. Drummond is 86. Now, there are a lot of good center plays here, but I want to start with Detroit. Just talking about this DraftKings pricing where you've seen both of them see their salaries drop significantly. And Blake Griffin has fallen below 9K for the first time in a while, but not just below 9K. He's at 8,400.
Yeah, the price tags are really nice. I'm still probably not getting much of either one because relative to other guys on DraftKings, they're still kind of expensive. It's a really unappealing spot against a good defensive Indiana team, also a really slow Indiana team. It's not that I think they're going to hurt me at that price point. It's just that there's a lot of guys that I think have higher ceilings. So, if I get some in tournaments, that's fine, but neither one's a priority for me.
All right. Yeah, it's hard to prioritize him. If anybody, I think Blake Griffin is a guy that I'd like to get some of just because that price is too. I mean, 8,400 is very cheap. I think he has a distinct advantage over Thad Young here in the size department. He's definitely not a necessity, and a lot of that comes by way of what you just mentioned. A lot of guys are underpriced, or at least very reasonably priced. They don't even need to be at the same position, but you're getting a lot of these 7 and 8K guys that are very, very appealing. But I do think Blake Griffin will be one of the ways that you can differentiate. I see his ownership coming down significantly now that you've gotten so many of these other players in the 7K range, whether it be Beal and Kuzma. Many of them actually really good plays, but we'll get to that. I just think that Blake Griffin should, at 8,400, be able to pay off that price point relatively easily. Aside from that, it's going to be hard for me to get to Drummond. And really, this game in general doesn't do all that much for me at all on either side. Maybe you see something I don't, but it's basically just the lower price points on Blake and maybe Drummond that I'm keying in on. Aside from that, I don't see much value here.
No, I'm right there with you. I'll mention just because we're talking about the game, but I think you could see Sabonis get a couple of extra minutes here because of the matchup against the big front court with Blake and Drummond. So, if you want to take kind of a stand on Sabonis at a mid or a low 6K price tag, maybe playing 26 to 28 minutes, then sure, but it shouldn't be a priority. It's just a really unappealing game overall.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because, by the way, I just noted you're growing your beard out, huh?
Not intentionally, just haven't shaved.
Oh, it's intentional. Go like this. Tilt your head up. You shaved, you son of a bitch. I could see it. You shaved. You're cropping that up and growing it out. I like it. Do you use beard? What is it called? Beard cream, beard goo?
No.
You make it no. Okay. I wasn't sure. If I grow mine out, I look real weird and I get chunks everywhere and I look like I'm homeless, like I'm a vagrant. With Washington though, getting back to the point, we saw Washington the other day where they faced Detroit. Jan Mahimi played 28 minutes. Marcus Morris played 33 minutes. or well, how many minutes? I think it was 33 minutes. Marcus Morris played 36 minutes, but almost all of his minutes came at the 4, while Mahimi and Bryant soaked up the minutes at the 5 because Detroit's front court makes for a very interesting and unique matchup for opposing teams. I think you're right that we could see some of that today with Indiana. I don't know how much it makes me want to target them, but I at the same time, I do think you're on to something that teams will really mix things up in the front court when they're facing Detroit's massive two bigs there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you're exactly right. Like, it's not, oh, I can't wait to play Sabonis here. Maybe on a different slate if this were like a 5-gamer and all the other plays didn't exist. But it's just worth pointing out that, if you are kind of digging through and trying to find a low-owned guy with upside, Sabonis probably picks up, 4 more minutes than normal here.
Yeah. Still hard to get to him, no question.
Yeah.
All right. What do you say we move on to the next one here? We got a lot of really good games to talk about. Charlotte and Brooklyn was one that I was on heavily on Wednesday. Definitely got some fortuitous bounces there with the double overtime. I had a bunch of Kemba and a bunch of who else was it? This was the double overtime game, right? Yeah. The home and home series. Yeah, I had a bunch of Kemba there. Didn't have any Dinwiddie on the other side. He exploded. But once again, we've got another scenario where it's, which one of Dinwiddie and Russell will show up, which one will get off to the hotter start, which one will Atkinson decide to give more run to. It's a situation that we've seen throughout, the past month and a half, and it's really difficult to predict which one it's going to be because it depends on their early play and Atkinson running with the guy that's playing better. So the Hornets are 4.5-point favorites. We do have a 220.5 total. What are you doing here, if anything?
Not prioritizing anything. I think that Dinwiddie and Russell both are perfectly fine tournament plays. They should come at next to no ownership because of this slate. They both clearly have upside. I still give a slight edge to Russell in terms of ceiling just because he does have the higher usage percentage. He has the higher assist percentage. The minutes are less secure than Dinwiddie's, but I think that Russell has a little bit higher ceiling. So if I'm going, and he's cheaper now. So if I'm going to one, like if I have to pick one, I'd say Russell, but neither one's a priority for me. Same can be said for Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, who had a really good game the last time out. He got some time at center. He played both overtimes at center, which was good to see. And it's obviously a matchup where they can do that again if they choose. But again, you're just not really prioritizing Rondae Hollis-Jefferson on the slate.
No, and Russell really is the perfect example of a secondary play here. Yep. You're not going to be loading up on Russell. It's going to be tough to do that. And even if you did, he's still a volatile player. I don't have an issue with Russell. I have him in the deep dive just as one of the honorable mentions because I have a tough time getting there, knowing that there are so many guards that are at least close to his price that I don't have to worry about them maybe playing less than 30 minutes because the backup point guard gets hot. That to me is tough. So
yeah, I mean the obvious comparison between 7 and 8K to Russell, like you have Bradley Beal who probably plays like
exactly
50 minutes in 4 quarters.
And even Zach LaVine on DraftKings, right. 6,500, and he's back in the starting lineup.
Yeah, really good point on LaVine.
Yeah, so a cheaper guy and a more expensive guy. It puts Russell in no man's land for sure. Nixon in Slack asked, what happened with D'Lo the other night, D'Angelo Russell? He never got another minute after the early fourth. So, yeah, Russell in that game played about 4 or 5 minutes into the 4.5 minutes into the fourth, never returned. And the lineup that they went with throughout the second half of the fourth and both overtime was Dinwiddie, Harris, Kurucs, Hollis-Jefferson, and who was the other one? Dudley, right. It was working, and that's the risk you run. When Dinwiddie's dropping monster numbers, you just have to run with him. Keep in mind, he came in and scored 11 points in his 8-minute stint in the fourth quarter and 9 points in overtime. There was no need to put him out there. Dinwiddie was playing better than Russell, and that's the risk you run. So, yeah. Do you have anything else from either side here?
No. You can kind of echo everything you said or everything we said about Brooklyn for Charlotte too. Kemba can score 60, but I'm not playing a lot of him. Jeremy Lamb is fine, but not a priority. Cody Zeller's probably like my favorite point per dollar play from this game, 4,500, but he's at a deep center position. And he's just not someone that gives you a ton of raw points all that often. So there's nothing that I'm prioritizing from this one either.
No, there's no way I'm going to again. I said this on Wednesday. I'll say it again today. I'd rather pay a little extra for Dwayne Dedmon if I'm going down there with Alex Len out. I know I know it's not really a 1-for-1, or it's not a lateral move. He is going to cost you a little bit more, but it's just such a better play. And I'd rather pay, or I'll go down to Thomas Bryant. So as the same thing we said with Russell when it comes to Levine and Beal, you have Thomas Bryant and you got a Dwayne Dedmon, whereas Zeller's in the middle. How do you make sense of that? I can't. Let's move on. Let's keep it going here, because neither of those games really stand out unless they go to overtime. I don't think you're going to be too worried about fading those. Washington and Chicago is a slightly different story, Adam. The Wizards are, interestingly enough, the Washington Wizards, despite losing like everybody, are still 4.5-point favorites. The totals come down from 216 to 213. But it's funny, the starting lineup you would have envisioned at the beginning of the season, assuming Howard wasn't hurt, would have been Wall, Beal, Porter, Morris, and Howard before moving Morris to the bench. They have one of those guys, one of them today. That is Bradley Beal. Howard is still recovering. Marcus Morris is not looking like he's going to play. John Wall has been ruled out. Otto Porter remains out. Austin Rivers is gone. Kelly Oubre is gone. This team is entirely different now, and Bradley Beal has a 37% usage rate with those four aforementioned guys off the court this season.
Yeah, and going back to last season, if you take all the guys off the floor that aren't going to be playing tonight, you're still at like 34% over about 300 minutes, a 30 or close to a 30% assist percentage as well. In the 3 games that he's played without Wall this season, he's averaged 1.35 fantasy points or DraftKings points per minute. Obviously, last time had the 80-point game in triple overtime, has like a 58-point game and a 46-point game. Playing monster minutes as well, so an uptick in productivity per minute, but also playing huge minutes. He sat like 3 minutes in Washington's last game, and we've consistently seen Scott Brooks give him 24 out of 24 second half minutes. No reason to think he doesn't get big minutes here. So, at a price tag where I was really interested in Beal, even if Wall was playing, there's really just no way for me to justify getting away from him here.
I don't know how you can. Then, if we had this news in advance and the sites could price him up and it's like, yeah, I'm paying the same price for Beal as Booker, then we'd have a conversation. But 7,800 on DraftKings, even on FanDuel, Bradley Beal 8,400, perfectly reasonable. His numbers are crazy with these guys off the court, and I don't just mean Wall, I mean all of them. Now, obviously, you have the issue that he's only played 97 minutes without Wall, Porter, Morris, and Howard. But do the math. Like you're looking at a lineup where you're going to have Thomas Bryant and Trevor Ariza and Jeff Green and Satoransky. Even if you didn't have a large sample, where's the usage going to go to? It's a very obvious equation here. There's not much else you really need to look at. Not to mention, did you see how many minutes Beal played in regulation last game?
Yeah, like 44, 45.
45.
Yeah.
They're 4.5-point favorites still. If he played less than 40 minutes, I would be surprised if he played less than 40 minutes in regulation.
Yeah, I haven't projected for 44, and that's just because I don't
crazy.
Sorry, for 40, not for 44.
Okay.
I have him for 40, and that's just because I don't feel the need to give him 44 because I'm already getting him in every lineup.
Right, exactly. It's just insane.
Yeah, and he has played, I just got the numbers back up. He's played 332 minutes since the start of last season without Wall, Morris, Porter, Howard, or Austin Rivers on the floor. 34.1% usage, 31.4% assist percentage, 1.28 DraftKings points per minute.
All right, there you go. Yeah, and then this year without those guys, it's 1.32 fantasy points per minute, I believe. So pretty consistent there, 1.31. He's a top option. You can't, like, this is one of those spots where you'd have a tough time saying, I'm just not playing him because he's going to be popular. The thing too about Beal is that even outside of scoring, he's giving you 5 rebounds, 5 assists per game. He's averaging a block and a steal per game. His peripherals have not been bad this year. So you get a lot from him. But the biggest thing for me is not only does his usage improve, his per minute production improve, not only does he have a perfectly fine matchup, But how often do you get a guy at this price tag with that usage, Adam, and per minute production that is legitimately projected, not hoping, but projected to play above 40 minutes?
Right. And yeah, he might not be the highest scorer out of all the guys in that price range. He's projected to be, but there's a pretty good chance it doesn't happen. But it's really difficult for him to actually let you down. And that's the other part of why I think he's such a good play, even though he's popular, is, how does he really bust here unless he gets hurt or gets in, massive foul trouble or something. But outside of that, how does he really, he'd have to be so bad on a per minute basis over 40 plus minutes to give you a score that really sucks at 7,800.
And if he does, the concern here would be that he gets off to a terrible start. And I know this, look, I get this is not something that we expect to happen, but in the event that Beal gets off to a miserable start, then they probably get blown out. Seriously, because I don't see, and yes, I mean by Chicago, I don't see any other way. I'm not saying they get blown out. Obviously not. I'm saying if Beal gets off to that bad of a start, I don't see anybody else bringing them back from the dead here. I just don't see how it can happen. Right. My only issue would be that even though it doesn't seem major, he is dealing with an illness, didn't go through shoot around. So hopefully that's minor enough that it doesn't influence him today. Hopefully it's minor enough that Brooks doesn't limit his minutes because of it. But Scott Brooks doesn't seem like the kind of guy that gives a shit about your illness. You're playing 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, let's get to the rest of this team then, because Beal isn't the only one here. We've got a whole lot to talk about. We'll start with Satoransky, who is probably going to see a whole lot of minutes. I don't know what they're going to do with guys like Chasen Randall. I don't know if G League phenom Jordan McRae is going to do anything or get any run, or if Ron Baker is going to see the court. I have no idea. All I can imagine is that because they're down a bunch of forwards, Satoransky isn't going to be seeing small forward minutes like we've seen before. He's going to play probably exclusively at the point. How many minutes are you projecting him for here?
I have him at 32.
Okay, I think that's fair. I actually think that might. I have him at. Hold on. I have him at 34, but I think 32 is fine. I could definitely see him exceeding 32, though. No question.
No, I agree.
I could see him getting up close to 40, actually. That could take a lot, but hey, when Wall was out, when they were dealing with injuries, he played 48 minutes against the Lakers, 48 minutes against Phoenix. I don't know how many of those went to overtime, but the fact is that Brooks is not afraid to run him for heavy minutes. So in terms of value, though, is Satoransky somebody that you're going to be plugging in everywhere?
Yeah, I'm not gonna have 100% of him in tournaments, but I would absolutely be playing Satoransky in cash, and he'll still be one of my highest owned value plays in tournaments. I would expect. I have him projected for 28 DraftKings points at 3,500, so it's pretty tough not to get a lot of him.
Yeah, I have him at 29, but I also have him playing 2 more minutes than you do, so that makes sense. Now, the front court here is interesting. There have been some games, where the 48 minutes at center are soaked up by Bryant, Mahimi, and Morris, just those 3 guys. And then others where Morris plays mostly at the 4, like he did against Detroit. Others, where Bryant gets more minutes than you would think. Now, give me the break. You and I talked about this earlier today, and we pretty much broke it down off the live stream, off camera. But I'll turn it over to you. Break down where you have Thomas Bryant here for minutes and production, because to spoil it, I like Thomas Bryant quite a bit at this $3,800 price tag, and you'll probably explain why right here.
Yeah, I have him projected for 28 minutes. I don't feel super comfortable with it, but I think that it's the most likely outcome is that you get a bunch of minutes for him, because you're going against a Chicago team with Carter and with Robin Lopez playing, the huge bulk of the minutes at center. Markieff Morris was the backup center. One of the first things I saw on Twitter today when Morris was ruled out was something about Jeff Green. Outside of last game when Green was in foul trouble and it didn't matter, Morris isn't taking minutes from Green. He's taking minutes from Thomas Bryant. If you look at the game that
last game he did because of the Detroit front court, but he
didn't even take minutes from Green. Green was just in foul trouble the entire game.
He only played 9 minutes.
Yeah,
Go ahead. It doesn't. Okay. It's not important because yes, you're right. He is the backup center, no question.
Right. like if you look at the triple overtime game against Phoenix, obviously Bryant got that many minutes because of triple overtime, but every minute that Keith wasn't playing center, you had Bryant. So now I expect Mahinmi to pick up some minutes. I have him at I have him at 20. I have Bryant at 28. Obviously that could vary between them, but I think Bryant gets the first opportunity, and he's been productive this year. He's better than they have at rebounding and rim protection, which isn't saying a lot, but he's been decent. He's averaged 1.1 DraftKings points per minute for the season. It's not like it's a bad matchup here against Chicago. It's really hard for me not to like Thomas Bryant.
Yeah, me too. I have him fewer minutes than you do at 26. Now I think he could see more than that, but I'm conservatively putting him at 26 based on this center rotation in Washington. And I still have him as one of the best value plays on this slate. If you look at Bryant, you don't have a massive sample, but I will throw it out there. Anyway, he's played 105 minutes without Wall, Porter, and Morris. I'm not including Howard, obviously, because those guys would never play on the court together anyway. It's 105 minutes without Howard if you put him in there too, because again, they don't play together. So without this year, he's 1.04 fantasy points per minute. That's just on the season. Not bad at all. Without those three guys, Wall, Porter, and Morris, he's at 1.32 fantasy points per minute in 105 minutes. But he has a 21.5% usage rate in that situation, 20.5% rebounding rate. Those are really good numbers. So am I saying that he's gonna take 15 shots today and haul in 11 rebounds? No. What I'm saying is at 20 or at 3,800, even 44 on FanDuel, if you think he's going to play 26, 28 minutes, it's really difficult not to like Thomas Bryant at that price tag. Pretty much that simple.
Yeah, and also power forward eligibility on DraftKings makes it even easier.
Yeah, it makes it way easier. I was very surprised to see him power forward eligible there. Like that's one of the pointless ones where, John, what's his name? Luka Doncic will be point guard for a month and a half, but Thomas Bryant has power forward eligibility. I don't know. I don't get it. Has he played any power forward minutes this year or enough to warrant I don't think so.
Definitely not enough to warrant it. I can't tell you if he's played one or not, but
right, exactly. Okay, so we got those pieces out of the way. Bradley Beal, Satoransky, and Thomas Bryant. Now let's talk about the forwards here. We've got Trevor Ariza, who's probably going to play like 48 minutes. And then you have Jeff Green without Morris projected to sit, and without Porter, without Wall, and of course Howard. So what are we doing here at the wing?
Yeah. So Ariza, obviously a really, really small sample since coming back to Washington, but it makes sense. He's at 21% usage without Wall and with Beal on the floor. Even if I project him a little bit lower than that, I still think that, he sees an uptick here just because you don't have John Wall and his 30% usage rate on the floor anymore. You also can get some assists from Ariza. He's capable of facilitating. He's capable of rebounding. And like you said, he should play, monster minutes here as well. I have him projected for 38. So I think he's a good play. I have him behind Beal. I have him behind Bryant. I have him behind Satoransky as far as, point per dollar plays. And where I'm prioritizing guys, but I think he's a perfectly fine play. And then the same goes for Jeff Green, who I think is too cheap. He's actually been one of the better players on the Wizards this year, which again isn't saying a lot, but it's worth pointing out that in 177 minutes with Beal on the floor and without Wall, still just a 15.3% usage rate for Jeff Green. He's averaged 0.7 DraftKings points per minute. So it's not necessarily like a great spot for him, and he doesn't get a bunch more minutes because Keith's out. He probably has the smallest change here out of anyone, but he's still cheap enough where if he ends up in some lineups, I think that's fine.
Some of these comments in Slack chat are mind-boggling. Seth says, have you factored in that Bryant sucks and also he's only going to play 20 minutes? So that means that he's projecting Mahinmi for 28, right? I mean, against a team that is not like Detroit. Dave says,
the Wizards could go small in an effort to get more minutes for Ron Baker and Sam Decker. That seems likely.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Dave says Bryant has a floor of 20 and a ceiling of 25. Also ridiculous.
Didn't he score 50 less than like a week ago?
Yeah, but hold on. You're using a chart of his production from we haven't been in this situation before. How that's crazy. He has not been in this situation. Played 105 minutes in this situation throughout the season, and he's averaging 1.32 or something fantasy points per minute. But he hasn't been in a full game. Like, how can you? I don't know. I don't know how you can. I don't know how you can put a ceiling at a 25 when he literally has not played in this scenario yet, just throughout a game.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
All right, man. I love you guys, but I just think. Oh, never. Now Dave's saying he misspoke. I'll take your word for it. My apologies then, because that had me a little bit. Concerned. Could Brian only go for 25? Yeah, absolutely. But to say that he couldn't easily go for 30 plus if he plays 26 or 27 minutes, that's wild. I mean, it's just a very, very favorable situation. And really, Adam, the only way, not to spend too much time here, but just to get your take, the only way he doesn't at least get 24 or 25 minutes is if they go super small, or if Jan Mahinmi plays like 28 minutes himself.
To be basically the entire
exactly. So I think
fail
if you wanted to, take a couple minutes off of Bryant, give him like 26 or 24 or whatever, and give a couple to Mahinmi, you're still going to get Bryant in lineups because he's so cheap and he's such a good player on a permanent basis. Like, he should be projecting for over a point per minute here. So if you wanted to take that route so that, you get less exposure to Bryant, you get more to Mahinmi, I think that's fine. But Bryant's the guy that I would really like to get a lot of.
Yeah, so I have to do a control F on it.
I don't think he's going to play
every single one of
minutes,
these columns is like a metadata that was
definitely not
attached to every
definitely
user,
not putting
and it's it could be
that low.
Every single plugin uses some.
Duncan asked if we could rank the Wizards. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Control F for UTM.
Let's rank
these are all mine that I use.
Hold on a second. So what is this? Hold on, let me unmute our stream because something weird is going on here.
So when they, sorry, I know we've gone through this before, but when the pixel,
hold on a second.
So
we've got
UTM code
what the heck is going on?
So you're basically
what is going? It's not us, boys. Hold on, it's not us.
The fact that they have a
hold on, let me.
I have no idea what you're even referring to.
There's a baby crying in the background and another stream playing over our stream.
So I can show you. Do you want me to go through a demonstration?
Yeah, that would be awesome if you could.
Hold on.
Okay, so if someone goes to awesemo.com and they have a query string parameter, which comes after the question mark of UTM. Actually,
it's still going.
There is. Eugen gave me
Spencer
an example
breastfeed.
URL, but I'm
Spencer says lofty breastfeed. I don't have a baby.
Okay.
Just so we're clear.
So if we look at this URL.
Neither does Adam.
We've got.
What in the shit is going on?
The first parameter is UTM source. The second parameter is UTM medium, UTM campaign.
How is this happening?
And then FBCL lid, whatever the hell that is. Okay. So these are four different
give
query
us a second. We'll get back on this. Hold on.
URL. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the first one, which is the UTM source, because that's the one that I'm actually tracking. And so if I open an incognito tab, it's gonna say blah 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 UTM source is equal to, and I'm gonna change this to test Tom UTM.
Is this
okay?
Is this
okay? If I go to this page, everything's great. But if I look at my cookies, I see latest UTM source is test Tom UTM. All right.
Gotcha.
So once I'm like clicking around the site or whatever, right? Obviously that it gets removed afterwards. So as I'm clicking around the site,
we're just gonna have to wait while they do this coding session.
Okay.
Now I go to join
until we can stop. Now they're talking about cookies. Talking about cookies.
Test subscriber 4. And I'll use NBA strategy. For free. Sign up. Test 4.
This is wild.
So then on this page here, on the actual thank you page, there is logic that essentially extracts
I'm gonna hold on.
latest UTM source from the cookies and attaches it to the WordPress user database. So there's sort of like
Okay, so I'm going
Yeah.
to call my producer.
Hey, hold on one sec.
Let's
Dave
see if he
calling.
picks
Hold
up.
Okay.
Hey, Tom, you guys are coming through our stream. Are you on a phone call right now? Yeah, that whole call is coming through our stream. All right. All right. So Oh, I wasn't muted. Good. Great. Wonderful. I thought I was muted.
I was wondering why you were just taking the phone call there.
Oh man. I got thrown off. We're good, huh? All right, we're good. All right. Let's go. All right. Let me just make sure. All right. All right. All right. We're good. Whoo. All right. Go ahead and yeah, how do we get back on pace after this? And Anthony says, "Ask for cookies." Well, I'm glad you guys got to see this, but that is the wildest thing. I start seeing ready. So here's the thing: I start seeing someone saying a baby's crying. Like, wait, what are you talking about? A baby? I don't have a baby. I know damn sure that Adam doesn't have a baby, right? Like, I know you don't have a baby. So where's the baby? And then I hear you get the URL and we'll get some cookies. I know. I talk about internet. I don't know, man. Spencer, I do need a Corona. Someone over to me. All right. Let's go. Rank your Wizards and we'll move on.
All right. So Beal's number 1 in any format. In cash, Satoransky's 2. In tournaments, Thomas Bryant's 2. In cash, Bryant is 3. In tournaments, Satoransky is 3. Ariz is 4 in either one. Jeff Green is... I guess I would actually probably go Green ahead of Bryant in cash, just because the minutes I think are pretty safe. But he would be my least favorite guy in tournaments.
All right, me too. Satoransky and Bryant just make a ton of sense here. And then with Beal, we already know what we're getting. All right, this is time for me to get back on track. Time for all of us to get back on track. No more babies, no more cookies. Let's talk about Zach LaVine on the other side. 6,500. So it's how a professional does it. 6,500. Crazy price point. Jumping back into the starting lineup. I know his per minute production comes down with Chris Dunn, healthy, but it's still a wildly underpriced salary.
Yeah, it is. I don't know how much.
That's great. See, I with all the Wizards that people are going to have, I think running it back with LaVine in some of these spots is such a good idea. 6,500 to me. I don't know. The guy's going to play 37 minutes again. But go ahead.
No, I mean, I agree with you. It's just like I put his rates into my projections, and I don't get like a great play. I get a good one. I'm at, like 29% usage alongside Chris Dunn. It's tough to get really good numbers too, because they haven't played a lot of minutes with each other, especially if you try and, factor in Lauri Markkanen as well. So it's tough to get, really good numbers. But I have LaVine with like a 29% usage rate, a 20% assist percentage, playing 36 minutes. And I have him at like 35.5 DraftKings points. So like, I think he's good. I'll probably have some, but it's not as, I'm not as high on him as I kind of expected to be.
Fair enough. Yeah, I have him lower than I did earlier today before the news, but I still like him. It's hard to get the info too, because even if you ran it with LaVine and Dunn from last year, it still isn't going to do you justice, because LaVine has just been taking a huge step forward this year.
Right.
It's not, you're not getting the same Zach LaVine as we had last season. So for me, it's a little bit more difficult to run that. And then when both of them were in Minnesota in 2016, with that case, that you glean nothing from that either.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, then you're talking about like Karl Anthony Towns minutes and everything else.
Exactly. So it doesn't do anything for us. But no, I still think 65 is too cheap. Do I agree with you that I won't have nearly as much as I would have Like if this whole situation hadn't happened in Washington and Paul George and so on and so forth, yeah, absolutely. But I'm still 100% looking at him as a quality play at $6,500. But that's really all I have for Chicago. If I'm running it back with anyone, because we got a lot of people saying, it's 4 Wizards too much. I think 4 would be a bit too much. 3 seems to be the good number there, but to each his own. Levine would be the guy I run it back with. Anybody else for Chicago for you?
I don't mind some Wendell Carter in tournaments either. He's 4,800. It's just such a good spot here. Obviously the minutes are all over the place, but if he plays like 26 minutes at 4,800, this is just such a get right spot for every center that faces them. A really bad rebounding team, a really bad defensive team. Carter does have the skill set to take advantage of it if he can stay on the floor. So I don't have an issue having him in some lineups.
All right. Fair enough. Let's keep it going then. Toronto and Orlando. I can't imagine we'll spend a whole lot of time here unless you and I are on totally different pages. Hey, it's possible. Toronto 5-point favorites, 209 point total. This game's in Orlando. No Kyle Lowry, of course, but Fred VanVleet's price is coming up a bit. It's hard for me to justify paying more for him than a few other point guards that have already been discussed and have yet to be discussed. Same with shooting guard. I don't know, man. I don't have much here whatsoever.
No, I mean, Leonard I have as a good play, but that was kind of more so before all the news broke. It's really tough for me to pay over $9K for a guy that I projected for 50 to 52 fantasy points, because I can get that for less on the slate. Orlando has played at the slowest pace in the league over the last month. They rank basically in the middle of the pack in defensive rating. It's not like it's a really appealing pace up spot. I think Kawhi has a good game. I just think I can get his production for a lot less money on this slate. VanVleet on FanDuel I think is a good play. He's only 5,500 there, 5,600 on DraftKings. Not great when he plays alongside Kawhi, even without Kyle Lowry, but he should play 36 to 38 minutes here. And at 5,500 on FanDuel, that, just gives you enough opportunity to where he's viable.
Yeah. Kind of how you talked about Levine, like good play, but not someone you be able to get a ton of. That's kind of how I feel about this entire game.
Yeah.
Whether it be Vooch, who I still think is too cheap. Like I think this is 8,200 for Vucevic is too cheap. How much will I have? I don't know, because there are a lot of guys that are too cheap. Kawhi Leonard, sure, no question, but there are a lot of guys with 60 fantasy point upside that you can get for $1,000 cheaper than Kawhi. And I kind of feel that way for this entire game, Adam.
Yeah, I ran a DraftKings crunch right before the show, and I got 2% Nikola Vucevic. Even though I really like him, I got 2%.
Fair enough. Hate to hate 83 says Leonard low owned. I'll take my chances for that above 50. Low owned, yeah, but you're gonna want more. You're gonna want more than like 53 at 9,200.
Yeah, that's the thing you have to keep in mind. You can't just blindly look at look at a salary and be like, oh well, he's low owned and I think he can get this score and it's a good score. It's relative to everyone else on the slate. If think about Giannis yesterday and Kevin Durant at a $2,500 price difference. Giannis got 69 points. That's really good. Unless you had him with Kevin Durant, you're at a disadvantage because Durant scored 4 points less.
Right. Yeah, sure. Man, Harden, that was crazy. He gets off to a fiery start in the first quarter, shoots 7 for 9. By the way, I don't know if you saw this. There was a point in the game where he had made 10 shots. Let me pull this up. Not that it's too important, but I thought it was pretty wild. James Harden last night had 45 points and he made 11 field goals. Only 2 of them were 2-point field goals. He was 9 of 18 from 3, 9 of 18, and 2 for 8 from 2-point range. It was really, really wild game for Harden.
14 made free throws as well.
Yep, on 17 attempts.
Yeah.
Let's keep going here. I want to get to all the good games. Sorry, look, Adam and I are doing better with our trying to do better going forward with our time management on games, but maybe cut us some slack on this one. Some unexpected technical difficulties of babies crying and cookies in the background will tend to throw you off. So we're still going to do our best. Don't worry. And we're going to get through all of these. We're actually making decent time. Minnesota and Atlanta. Minnesota Timberwolves 9.5-point favorites, a 230 total, tied with LA Clippers, LA Lakers for the highest on the slate. I do have interest in this game, Adam. I think somebody like Derrick Rose, because of all the value, will probably go overlooked in a lot of spots. I love this spot for him against this Atlanta backcourt. He played 38 minutes last game in a blowout, was on pace for 41 minutes, but even in the blowout, he played so much. He's played so many minutes. Thibodeau has no desire at all to limit him going forward, and I love it. I think Derrick Rose is playing great, leads the team in usage since Butler has been gone and since the start of December. And really, if you look at his numbers, Derrick Rose this season Derrick Rose with Teague and Butler off the court, 31% usage, 30% assist rate, 1.18 fantasy points per minute. And Atlanta's just been crushed by point guards. Trae Young's a terrible defender. It's a good spot. It's a good spot for Karl Anthony Towns as well. So I know there's some blowout potential here, but man, just on the surface, on its face, it's a really good spot for Rose and Towns.
Yeah, this is a really appealing game if we are going to get these guys at low ownership because of because of all the other obvious plays. You mentioned Rose. I have him projected for like 34 minutes here just because I'm chalking up that last game to it being at Chicago. But still, 34 minutes here alongside Towns without Teague or Butler, 29.4% usage, 29% assist percentage. He's averaged over a fantasy point per minute. So obviously still a really good spot here at an appealing price tag. I love Towns. I think that the price tag on FanDuel is insane, and it's really nice on DraftKings as well. It's sub 10K, should play 36 plus minutes in a competitive game, was well on his way to a monster game his last time out, if the game hadn't, blown out. But alongside Derrick Rose without Teague or Butler this season, 22% rebounding percentage and a 25% usage rate. He's doing everything while he's out there. Obviously a really good spot. But then also you have Robert Covington, who's playing more minutes now. He's finally back to playing his 36 to 38. And, not that he's a priority, but it's a weak small forward position on FanDuel, and he's there. Also, Josh and I talked about it a little bit this morning. Certainly not a priority, but it's a guy that you can get at a cheap price tag and low ownership against Atlanta. Taj Gibson has been kind of seeing his minutes go back and forth with Dario Saric. And it's been unpredictable, which one plays like 28 and which one plays 20. But my best guess is that Gibson's on the high end here because John Collins will just go absolutely nuts if Dario Saric is out there defending him.
Yeah, 100%. I forget what game it was a couple of weeks ago where we were doing the show. I had mentioned that it was a backup power forward that I was hoping would match up with Saric and would see the bulk of his minutes against Saric. And fortunately he did. And we got it was Marvin Bagley. It was Marvin Bagley in that game. We got big game from him because Saric defensively is terrible. So it's a good point. By the way, Kyle in our YouTube chat mentioned that Rose only got those extended minutes in the blowout because it was in Chicago. You could definitely be right. But my point is that Thibodeau's still ran a dude that has the most checkered injury history in the league for 38 minutes in a game where he didn't need to. So he's not afraid to give him big minutes every game, regardless of the situation. So I'm not, real quick, I'm not projecting Rose for 38 minutes tonight. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that I'm still putting him up around 33, 34. And with his production, with Teague and Butler off in a matchup against the worst team in the league defensively that plays at the fastest pace with most points allowed to point guards and to opposing teams, it's a really good spot.
Yeah, I mentioned the Chicago thing too when you were reading chat, but I agree with your point that it's not that you're projecting him for 38 plus minutes. It's that he's perfect. He's clearly healthy and Tibbs isn't concerned about it.
Right, exactly. And yeah, my fault. I missed that. Try and catch up on our chat. Matthew said Rose played 38 minutes a few games ago too. He did. That was overtime. He played the whole overtime period. But still, again, Thibodeau is not afraid to give him some minutes. On the other side, look, Dwayne Dedmon was good to me on Wednesday, man. I was hoping for 35 fantasy points. We got 48. I'll take it. Hoping for 34 minutes. Got 37. But Len is out. Plumlee is still rehabbing. I know Dedmon's prices come up a little bit, but I still don't hate him. Look, the guy, if he's playing well, Lloyd Pierce is going to give him 30 plus minutes easily and potentially even more. I don't see them going to like Amari Spellman at the 5 here unless you're giving a little break for Dedmon. So I still think he gets good run, matches up, and they'll match him up against Karl Anthony Towns. Where do you stand on this Atlanta Hawks team?
Yeah, I'm with you on Dedmon. I just think it's a good matchup for him. Obviously, the minutes should be there as well, so I'm fine going right back to Dedmon. John Collins in tournaments is fine, but it's just that his price tag's a little bit more expensive than I think I need to pay to get the production that I'll probably get. Dedmon's easily my favorite play here. I don't mind having some Jeremy Lin in tournaments just because he's really cheap and he's a really good per minute. He's a really good per minute producer. It's just a matter of you have to get lucky in a game where Trae Young plays fewer than 28 or 30 minutes. But Lin's always 1 or 2% owned, and if you happen to run good on the minutes, he can win you a tournament.
Yeah, and he's a tough one. He's definitely a tough one. John Collins is still cheap too, less expensive than he should be. I don't think I'll end up there, but 7,700 I'm not totally opposed to. It's just I don't know how easy it's going to be to get there, Adam. I will say this much though. If you're talking about just ownership and you look at, Kyle Kuzma and John Collins, there should, at the same price, there should be a big difference in ownership there. And I actually don't, I don't have, well, I ask you, where do you have in terms of fantasy points projected for Collins and Kuzma? Because it's not like I have Kuzma projected markedly higher than Collins tonight.
I have Collins at 41 DraftKings points, and I have Kuzma at 45.5.
Oh, you do have him higher. Okay. Or a lot higher. I don't have him. I have it like a 1 point difference here. So yeah, there's your decision. But I don't think Collins is the worst pivot off Kuzma. And the reason I say that is because it's not like if you don't play Kuzma, you aren't still benefiting, or you can't still benefit from LeBron and Rondo being out. There's still Lonzo. There's still Ingram, who we'll get to in a minute. I have some good stats on him from last night's game. There's still a bunch of players in that game that you can get to. Anybody else from Atlanta, Minnesota that you want to discuss?
Nope, I'm good there.
All right. Talk to me about, I forgot this was on the slate. Miami and Cleveland. Miami 9.5 point favorites with a 202 total here.
Do I have to?
You don't. You don't.
If you get some Hassan Whiteside in tournaments, that's cool. If you get some James Johnson, that's cool. I mean, this game's just
it's horrible,
entirely unappealing.
By the way, we got news that Levine's going to be limited to around 30 minutes. Do I believe that? Not really. I really don't. I don't buy it. But it's still worth noting. And if that's the case on a slate like this, then yeah, Levine definitely becomes less appealing. No question. Even at 6,500, I still think he plays more than that. I really do.
I'm leaving his projection alone just because I had him lower than I was comfortable with anyway. So,
right, exactly. And he scored 28 real points in 26 minutes last game off the bench. I think he plays like 33, but still got to point that out because it definitely influences a lot when it comes to targeting Zach LaVine. And I'll probably pump the brakes a little bit there now that we got that info. Do you just want to move on from Miami, Cleveland? Like you said, I'm sure you could point out a Whiteside or someone, but if you're prioritizing players from this game, I'm not sure you're doing things the right way.
Right. I mean, there's a couple marginal plays on Miami. There's less than a couple on Cleveland. Nothing that is a priority now that we've gotten entire teams ruled out.
Yeah, exactly. You're not kidding either. New Orleans and Dallas, another one where I'm not sure how much I can prioritize here either. Pelicans 4.5 point favorites. You do have a high total in this game. It's at 229, but we're still talking about a spot where Dennis Smith Jr. is back. You may not think that has a whole lot to do with Doncic, and maybe it doesn't. But if Dennis Smith plays 26, 28 minutes in the starting lineup and he's at the point guard position, I do expect Luka Doncic's potential assists to come down. And with his price tag being the highest it's ever been, that influences my evaluation, my projection for him. So really all this does, yes, we do have Wesley Matthews out, but really all this does is kind of wipe Dallas off the map for me tonight.
Yeah, still waiting on news as far as I know for that starting lineup. If Maxi's starting again, which I'm expecting him to, at 3,400, that's a nice way to be contrarian, I think, because nobody's going there. Dennis Smith Jr. on Yahoo at $11, but outside of that, I'm with you.
Yeah. Dennis Smith, yeah, he's been $10 and $11 for like weeks, and you knew that they wouldn't change it in time,
Yeah.
right? Like you knew that they weren't going to nail it. You know, they could have. It was possible, but they didn't because, well, what are you going to do? Yahoo's still relatively new to the DFS game, especially with people actually playing on the site, and people have been playing on the site for sure. There's no question. It's it's been a hit with this guaranteed overlay. Everything filled up again early today for basketball, but you still have the NFL $1 Million Baller on Sunday, $20 entry, $1 million prize pool, $250,000 in overlay. That's Sunday 1 p.m. for this huge 16-game slate to close out the regular season. They got the mini baller, 5K in overlay, $25,000 prize pool. That's a $1 entry. Both of these are 10 max contests. So if you haven't checked it out, oh, and they have what is this? The $150,000 free roll? Why does it say 3K free roll? What am I missing here?
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me.
I don't know. It is $1,000 to first place, though. Why does it say 150K in prizes? And then it says a 3K. I don't know, but yeah, free roll for 3,000 or 150,000. I'm not sure which one. Anyway, if you haven't signed up on Yahoo yet, use the code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. Get $30 deposit bonus on any deposit, $30 or more, just by using the sign-up code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. Everything's filled for today. Everything filled quick yesterday, but it'll be back tomorrow with more of the overlay contest. And, of course, the NFL $1 Million Baller and the 25K mini baller are both still open with a lot of unfilled spots for Sunday's NFL Week 17 contests. All right. We talk about Dallas. Let's go to the home team here. You've got New Orleans. I think we were definitely right to fade Davis on Wednesday. Yeah, he had 63 fantasy points, 62 and a half fantasy points, but not having him, I think, was a benefit. Going balanced did me real well. Again, you can play Davis today and he could give you, 60 plus. Who knows? Maybe he goes for 80. But is that the optimal build, plugging Davis into your lineups, is the question.
Yeah, I don't think so. I have trouble getting there because you also have Westbrook now at that same price point who is missing Paul George. Whereas, Nikola Mirotic is out, but with Randall active and Randall healthy, that just has a really marginal impact on Anthony Davis. So it's without getting into ownership, which obviously is important, but just talking about, Anthony Davis from an optimal standpoint, it's tough to prioritize him over Westbrook. So I'm not getting a lot of him unless once ownership's updated before lock, it's a big difference. Then I would, maybe give an edge to Davis.
Yeah. We have a couple of people talking in chat about how it's very easy to play Davis with all the value. And I don't think you're wrong. It still is. But again, is that the move? And then go with a grouping of cheap dudes, or go more balanced, or go Russell Westbrook.
Right.
So we'll get there. We'll get there.
That's the thing for me. It's not a matter of it. Just like the other day, it's not a matter of I can't make lineups that I like with Davis. I just make lineups I like more without Davis.
Right. And that's a good way to put it. That's all it is. Jay Kelly says, just play Westbrook and Davis. Yeah, probably not doing that. Oh, got it. One straw. He said it was a season-long thing. 150K is the season total prizes. 3K is this week, I believe. He says, I don't know. Still 3K times 17. I'm no mathematician, but that doesn't equal 150. Unless they've done 10K one week and the next week 15. I don't know. Who cares? But they got a bunch of contests for NBA or for NFL Sunday, and they'll have more for NBA tomorrow. So yahoo.com. Anything else for New Orleans? I mean, is Holiday a guy that you're looking to get to? Julius Randle on DraftKings is still $7,900. Do you prioritize or lock in, or really just even like anybody from New Orleans today?
Yeah, I like Randle on DraftKings specifically. The caveat being that looking at our recently updated ownership projections, he's projected for more ownership than Kyle Kuzma by a lot. If that's the case, I assume I'll end up with more Kuzma, just projected similarly, and that's a pivot that I'd be pretty comfortable with. But I do think it's a good spot for Randle. I think that you get around 36 minutes from him. I think he averages, well over a point per minute as usual.
Oh, by the way, I'm an idiot. Please forgive me. I had NFL filtered on Yahoo. I'm stupid. Still flustered from the baby. The baby still threw me off. That NBA baller's still open. 16,500 out of 20,000, 250K, 50K in overlay. So please forgive my stupidity and go over and check it out. All right, enough of that. Let's move it on to Denver and San Antonio. You and I talked about this a lot today, and I'm going to ask you to break it down now. Denver 4-point favorites, 214.5 total. Another home and home series. The Spurs won last game by doing a very good job of taking Jokic out of the game as a scorer. Not so much as a facilitator, as a scorer. Now they play again 2 days later. Right now on DraftKings, we have Jokic projected to have very high ownership, easily the highest center, and on FanDuel, it's a little different because that price tag is way higher. But he's still projected at like top 10 or top 11. Tell me about what you saw here and why you think he could affect Jokic tonight.
Yeah, so basically what was happening in that game, and Jokic had a 15.9% usage rate. He shot the ball 5 times. What was happening was Denver had no issue getting the ball to Jokic. They were getting it to him at the 3-point line. They were getting it to him at the elbow, and he was being defended by, Aldridge or Pirtle, whichever was on the floor. But as soon as he put the ball on the floor and he started trying to back them down, or he started trying to post them up, 1 or 2 help defenders, 1 or 2 of the guards would come over and double or triple team Jokic and force the ball out of his hands. We know he's a capable passer, a very good passer. We know he's a willing passer. And as soon as they would double or triple team him, he would just find the open wing that had a wide open 3, whether that was Gomez, Murray, Beasley, Monte Morris, and get it out of his hands. So he shot the ball 5 times, but in 21 minutes, in 31 minutes, he had 22 potential assists in that game, which is just absolutely insane.
It's insane for anyone, let alone a center.
Right. And so it makes it a really, really interesting spot, especially where he's 8,800 on DraftKings, because on one hand, I'm terrified because there's no reason to think that Pop doesn't use the exact same game plan since they won that game and since it had its intended effect. And rostering, paying $8,800 for a guy who I don't think is going to shoot the ball very much isn't really appealing. But on the other hand, if you're going to have, James Harden-like assist numbers from Jokic, he still projects as a really good play. So ultimately, I want to just play, the ownership game with him. Right now, we have him projected as one of the highest owned centers. And I think the way to combat that in tournaments is to be under the field on Jokic and be over the field on guys like Malik Beasley, Monte Morris, Jamal Murray, and Juancho Hernangomez, because these guys, if the Spurs come in with the same game plan, these guys are going to be getting wide open threes. They're going to get more usage. I think you get more minutes for Hernangomez, Beasley, and Morris because they're better 3-point shooters than Trey Lyles or Jamal Murray. So it just changes the entire way this game plays out if the Spurs do that again.
Why wouldn't they?
Right.
Why wouldn't they? I mean, I do worry about this, honestly, especially if owners, I think, because I mentioned to you earlier today, I said, man, right now he's projected for the second highest ownership. And that to me he took 5 shots last game. And, one might say, well, yeah, that's because he just does that once in a while, and he just doesn't really care to shoot. Well, he hasn't attempted less than 13 shots in a game since November. So it was designed. This was by design with Popovich. And, much like Belichick does with Patriots opponents, Popovich has always looked to take the opposing team's, most impactful player out of the game in one form or another. And they did a good job against Jokic.
Yeah.
Jokic just had, go ahead.
I was saying, and really, why wouldn't you? He's torched the Spurs in the past. The Nuggets don't have Harris right now. They don't have Millsap. They don't have Will Barton. They're playing with a bunch of backups. Why would you ever let Nikola Jokic beat you?
Right. That's exactly what I was going to say. So I don't even need to continue. Anyway, we talked Denver. Look, play Jokic at your own risk. All we're saying is that there's no doubt that this was schemed to get Jokic out of the game, not just this wasn't just happenstance, and that's something you really have to keep in mind. With San Antonio, look, I think guys like Rudy Gay are reasonably priced. I think Bryn Forbes has been good to me. And at this rate, if you're playing one of Forbes or Derek White on any slate, I don't think you need to play either of them tonight. Just go with Forbes over White, because White has no floor and no ceiling. At least Forbes can give you decent numbers, and he's done so in a bunch of his last few games. I just have a really tough time getting to anyone in San Antonio and saying, you know what, this is the best play here in this price range.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, I like DeRozan, but he was my highest owned guy in this matchup all Wednesday. Now I don't know how much, if any, I'll have, just because it's a different slate with a lot of different players. I think $7K for Aldridge is really, really cheap. If we're going to get him at no ownership, that's a spot where I could see me certainly being over the field, but purely tournament plays here.
Yep, purely tournament plays. 2 games to go here. Making good time, man. OKC and Phoenix. Let's do it. We've got Phoenix 5-point home dogs here. Thunder on the road. 226-point total. No Paul George. I started digging into Westbrook, right, Adam? And I did some pretty thorough research for today's article on awesemo.com. You want to check out our content, by the way, the deep dive that Adam and I write. We switch off days. It's a lengthy, comprehensive article on all the top plays and all the injury news. You want to check out the ownership projections. We have 2 different NBA projections. Alex Baker, Awesemo's rankings, our lineup builder, and so much more for every other sport. Use the promo code Deeper Dive, one word. It's in the bottom right corner of your screen. Deeper Dive. If you go to awesemo.com and you click the homepage, and you go on the homepage, you click Join Now. Make sure to select, the best plan. Select the add-on for Fantasy Cruncher so you can check all of it out, and you'll be prompted to enter a promo code at the when you check out. Deeper Dive, one word. You can check everything out for a week free, no charge, no risk. So why not check it out? Hopefully we'll see you over there. But I did some digging, and Russell Westbrook last year, he shot 73 or 74% from the free throw line. This year, Adam, 61%. And the reason, so it seems, and he had even mentioned this in the past, is when the NBA changed their delay of game rule, where a player could not walk past the 3-point line in between shots, it threw him off rhythm. This is from Westbrook's mouth. I remember him saying this last year, and I looked it up again today to make sure. But he's shooting 61.3% from the line this year. Really bad number for a guy that for his whole career shot above 80%. Not only that, it's the worst of his career, but not only that, Westbrook is averaging the fewest free throw attempts of his career or since 2010. 5.6 free throw attempts per game, making only 3.4 per game. He has the worst true shooting percentage of his career. He has the worst 3-point percentage of his career, 248. Yet he still leads the league in assists. He still leads the league in assist rate and potential assists. He still leads all guards and rebounds. He's averaging 3.4 steals since the start of December, leads the league. So even though Westbrook's shooting and free throw shooting have been terrible this year, he is still leading the league in so many categories and can still give you 70-plus fantasy points without even hitting 30 like he did with 19 points against the Kings last week. So I wanted to get that out of the way. There are some red flags, but also he's just so dominant with such high usage with Paul George off the court that's not going to keep me back tonight.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like George being out is just such a huge deal. It's tough to get really perfect numbers for Westbrook because he's played so few minutes without George and with Schroeder this year. But if you kind of just replace Schroeder with Carmelo Anthony last season and accept that Anthony and Schroeder will probably have similar usage rates up at like 27 or 28%, you're still looking at about 40% usage for Russell Westbrook. Obviously a really, really high assist percentage, up 54, 55% without George. And it's a really good spot against Phoenix. It's really tough for me not to like Westbrook because another reason that he hasn't been as good this year, as productive, is simply that his usage rate has been down. Paul George is having a phenomenal year and his usage has been higher than we expected. Westbrook has been lower. George being out, I think, is really likely to just lead to like old Westbrook where it's just all him. Where
do you prioritize him with the guard position being so deep?
I mean, if we're factoring in price, I have Beal ahead of him, but other than that, it's Westbrook.
Yeah, I'd really like him tonight, man. It's so hard not to like him. Again, look, Phoenix doesn't. Someone talked about Phoenix playing down in pace. they still have a bottom 5 defensive rating and are still allowing like the 6th most points per game. So that shows you how bad defensively they are, that they play down in pace and still allow that many points.
Yeah, they're not good defensively. It's just
right,
it's not the old Phoenix team that couldn't defend and ran really fast.
Exactly. All right, we still got to get to this last game here, but I want to talk Schroeder and Adams. Schroeder and Westbrook should see a lot of staggered minutes tonight, given that you just don't get any bench depth if they're playing 2 minutes together and you have to sub them off at the same time. And Steven Adams, not a lot of minutes this year with George off, but a huge uptick in production. Where are you at on the rest of this OKC team? I, for one, like Schroeder, and I also like Adams.
Yeah, I like both of them as well. Schroeder still had plenty of usage when he plays alongside Westbrook. And like you said, he should see time without Westbrook on the floor as well. And then, Steven Adams here against DeAndre Ayton and a Phoenix team that cannot rebound should be able to just rebound at will. And obviously Adams a very good rebounder. A lot of his offense comes on the offensive boards. So, I like him a lot as well. He's my favorite out of those like mid-range centers.
Me too. Anyone else from OKC?
No, I mean,
Jeremy
Grant's okay. I don't really see the need though.
Me neither. And then Phoenix, I think Booker's a solid tournament option, but with the Beal news, with the Wall news, it's hard to prioritize him.
Yep, agreed.
All right, let's finish it out. Lakers and Clippers. Last game of the night. The only game past 9 o'clock is at 10:30 Eastern. Clippers are 5.5 point favorites. This is at the Staples Center, so no real home team here, no real away team either. 230 point total. Let's hear it. Rondo out, LeBron out. What do you got for the Lakers?
Yeah, I mean, same situation obviously as last night, where we got about 37 minutes from Lonzo, and that was with him losing a little bit of time to cramps. He says he should be good to go tonight. Obviously, keep an eye on that on late swap sites, but I'm assuming he goes, and he's still just way too cheap for this spot. The minutes are solidified without Rondo out there. He is needed to do a lot more offensively without LeBron, so he remains, clearly one of the top plays on the slate. Kyle Kuzma and Brandon Ingram, both really good plays again, both too cheap. You got 40 minutes from Kuzma last night. I have him projected for 38 here. I think that's a very reasonable projection. 36 to 38 minutes for Ingram as well, with more ball handling responsibilities without Rondo and LeBron also. So those three guys, obviously big priorities for me. And then you get into some of the cheaper guys. Josh Hart probably plays 34 to 36 minutes. They probably aren't the most productive minutes. Lance Stevenson plays anywhere from 18 to probably 24 minutes, averaging over a fantasy point per minute. Your guess is as good as mine, how that goes. And then as far as I know, we're still waiting on center news with JaVale McGee.
We are. He's still questionable.
Yeah.
Ingram had 10 potential assists and 8 rebound chances yesterday, finished with 2 and 3 respectively. So I think that you could see a definite uptick in Ingram's production there outside of scoring. He took 19 shots. I like Ingram at this price. If I'm prioritizing Ingram or Kuzma, give me Ingram at a cheaper price point, although both of them I like. Obviously like Lonzo Ball. Shout out to Ring Rim for his Lakers making a fierce stand and holding off the Kings. Oh, wait, that's right. Bogdanovich hit a game-winning 3. But no, look, these guys are all very good plays. I'm not touching the center position there tonight. Don't think it's necessary. And I have less interest in Hart now that we've got so much value elsewhere. But at 37 on FanDuel, he definitely still has some appeal. We'll close it out with the Clippers. For me, Montrezl Harrell would be my guy. Aside from that, and even he's tough with his price up, but I still think this is a great spot for him. Aside from that, I can't really get there.
Yeah, everyone just seems pretty correctly priced to me. Even Harrell, I mean, he plays 26 minutes. And, that's just really tough on the slate. I thought it was actually interesting. I noticed it today. Over the last month, Harrell is averaging the exact same per minute production as Danilo Gallinari, but Gallinari is averaging an extra 7 or 8 minutes per game. But people play Harrell more. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything from the Clippers unless I'm forcing a game stack.
Yeah, I still like Harrell. I still think he has the upside here, and this game sets up really nicely for him. I don't really care who's starting at center for the Lakers. But aside from that, I don't trust Gallinari's volume right now. Tobias Harris is real tough to get to with all those guys priced so close to him in really good spots. It's pretty much it. It's the Lakers for me and maybe some Harrell if I'm running it back. I think that'll do it, huh?
Yeah.
All right, stick around. Live Before Lock coming up next. Hey, thanks for dealing with the difficulties. We love you guys, man. We appreciate it. Sometimes things can get tough here on the Deeper Dive, but we power through it. If you appreciate the show, please give us a thumbs up. It helps us out quite a lot. subscribe and hit that notification bell. Great luck tonight. Have a good weekend. We'll see you back here Monday, New Year's Eve. Until then, we'll see you later.